Professor Kimura, why does the Takeshima issue irritate South Korea and Japanese people so much?
The first point here is the importance of Takeshima or a doctor for South Korean people. Korea is a unique country located between two neighbors, China to north and Japan to south, and their neighbors are bigger than Korea. They have had several trying experiences between these two powerful nations. So theoretically and historically, Korea has had many seas of dispute, not only with Japan, but also with China. But today, as long as North Korea between China and South Korea, disputes, especially territorial disputes with China, are just theoretical. In other words, Takeshima doctor issue is the only real territorial dispute with the other neighbor, Japan. And so South Korean people are paying a great amount of attention to this issue. This Takeshima doctor is a small group of rocky islands. The area is just 230,000 square meters, smaller than 1/10 of Central Park in New York. But the symbolic importance for South Korean people is great. It is one of the most important symbols of Korean nationalism, and the dispute with Japan easily reminds them their very bad memory under Japanese rule before 1945. Some South Korean people even seem to believe that Japan's claim for doctor may be followed by other bigger claims for their mainland. Of course, it is nothing to believe that today's Japan is going to that kind of anachronistic way, and there's no reason to believe so, I think. But with the old bad memory of Japanese rule, some South Korean people believe so.
So, Japanese people have to know some South Korean people believe so. The anti-Japanese sentiment of the South Korean public has been further intensified recently because of the content of Japan's history textbooks. Japanese Foreign Minister Machimura explained the Japanese stance when he met South Korean Foreign Minister Ben on the 7th of April last week. Professor Kimura, what do you say about the textbook issue?
Yes, the attitude of Korean government against textbook issue looks to have changed. The government is strongly criticizing the Japanese government on Takeshima issue in one hand, but on the other hand, they say they will not do the same thing on the textbook issue to the Japanese government. But I suppose it doesn't mean that they understand the position of the Japanese government on the textbook issue. Rather, we should understand it as a tactics of South Korean government against the nationalistic movement and sentiment in Japan. They are trying to divide these two issues. It never means that they admit the way of Japanese government to do whole textbook. Actually, some Korean people are showing very strong nationalistic sentiment against some Japanese textbooks, and clearly, Korean government and the President Roh Moo-hyun are supporting it.
Japan and South Korea agreed to end the dispute over historical issues when Japanese Prime Minister Keizo Obuchi and South Korean President Kim Dae-jung signed a joint declaration on a new Japan-South Korean partnership toward the 21st century. Even after Roh Moo-hyun assumed office as South Korean president, the two countries continue to maintain good relations with future-oriented relations as a keyword. Today, an increasing number of Japanese people are visiting South Korea, thanks to the popularity of the South Korean TV dramas in Japan. This year marks the 40th anniversary of the normalization of the Japan-South Korea diplomatic relations. In such an important year, many problems that confront the two countries, such as the historical perception, territorial issue, and the textbook issue, are coming to the fore. What is the background behind the recent move?
I think there are 2 points here. First, today there are tremendous amount of cultural, economical, social, and even political exchanges between the two nations, but it never directly means that the people of the nation has got some level or mutual understanding of each other. Cultural exchange helps to get them to know more about each other, but it never solves the old and entangled problems between the two nations. For example, people in the world are watching Hollywood movies, but it doesn't mean that everyone watching the movies has a good understanding about the United States. The second point is paradoxical. South Korea has developed their nation, and so today's relationship between Japan and South Korea is becoming that of between two equal developed nations. When the relationship was something between rich and poor, or strong and weak, South Korean people had frustration that they couldn't raise their voice straightly against Japan under its bigger political and economical influence. But today's young South Korean people don't have such an understanding against Japan. They have confidence and nationalistic pride of their nation. In this meaning, the Korea boom in Japan last year and today's Korean nationalism are both sides of one coin. Because Korea has had a good economy which can compete with Japan, today's Korean movies and dramas are attracting Japanese people. But because they are also competing with Japan, they have their reason to have high price on the nation. The Nomichon government is supported by such young and proud people. And so the voice of the government is reflecting their understanding. For such young South Korean people, becoming equal with Japan is itself future-oriented. They have no reason to believe such nationalistic claims against Japan is against future-oriented policy of Nomichon government.
Not all Japanese people have ill feelings towards South Korea. It just doesn't seem that all South Korean people have strong anti-Japanese sentiment. Frankly, what do South Korean people expect Japan to do?
In one phrase, they want Japanese people to listen to their voice. South Korean people, with memories of colonial rule, again, tend to believe that Japan is always arrogant and imperialistic against Korea. Even in the statement of President Nomichon, there was a phrase to say about Japanese hegemonism. They believe that Japan always neglects their voice. This is a part of the reason that Five Korean nationalist movement is always sensational with some overexpression. So, sending our message that we never neglect their voice is the most important. That is a message that says we can sincerely watching you. It is different from saying that we admit their claim. But as a first step to get a relationship with trust, I believe this is the most basic, but most important thing, not only between two nations, but also between the peoples. Another important thing is to explain them about the situation of today's real Japanese society and Japanese people. There are many misunderstandings between Japan and South Korea, but if South Korean people really believe that today Japan is going toward imperialism, like 1 century ago, I think this is the worst misunderstanding between the two nations. Here, there is a background of South Korean society. Japanese rule left many Japanese-speaking people after colonial rule, but the older generation could understand Japanese society directly in Japanese language, even when Japanese themselves don't explain it to them. But today's young South Korean people, most of them, have never learned the Japanese language, so we need to explain them by ourselves to Korean people. I think as long as South Korean people have such a long and imperialistic understanding on Japanese society, they cannot talk about these issues calmly with Japan. It seems to be going a long way, but it is the only way for Japanese people to go.
Finally, Professor, how should Japan and South Korea remove the ill feelings towards each other and overcome the obstacles hampering the good relations between the two countries? And what sort of exchanges are necessary to do so? Please give us your frank opinion as an expert of the situation of the present South Korean society and the Japan-South Korea relationship.
Of course, it is not easy, but if there is something like a final goal for the future relationship of the two nations, I believe it must be a situation where people living in both countries live, work, and enjoy their lives without paying any attention to the nationalities of the other people and themselves. However, up until now, interrelationships between the both nations are not this way, but rather putting an emphasis on nationality of people and even on products. Like the number one movie in Korea or the best hit manga in Japan. In other words, their inter-exchange of the two nations is always with the name of the nations. And sometimes it has an effect to accelerate nationalistic sentiment, like a football game between the two national teams do so. However, I believe for the real and true inter-exchange of Japan and South Korea, the nationality of the people or products are never important. Like a good thing is good and a bad thing is bad, whatever nationality the people or the product have. The future of both nations must be meaningful, not just for the two nations, but also must be meaningful in the world. If both countries couldn't go beyond this kind of old type of nationality inter-exchange, the world will go by and leave the nations behind in the corner of East Asia. Solving the territorial dispute or historical issues may be very difficult. However, we can learn how to discuss these issues calmly. We shouldn't forget the world is watching us.
Last phrase is very important. Professor Kimura, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And that was Professor Kan Kimura from Kobe University, interviewed by Dai Nishimura.